Welcome, everyone, to our episode one of a new adventure, a new journey that Natasha and I are beginning today. We are starting a new project, a new
Mhm.
way of helping people. And to begin talking about us, thank you, Natasha, of course, for agreeing in this project and for being
Absolutely.
open to spread this message. We would like to share our mission of what is it that we want to do. We want to merge science and spirituality to bring awareness of a conscious approach to our physical, to the mental and emotional and spiritual health. So that's what we are here to do. We are going to use all of our background and all of the techniques and life experience and everything that we have lived, which is the episode of today, talking about our background. So let's begin with yours, Natasha.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, and welcome to this new project, this new adventure. As David said, I can't wait to see where this journey takes us and what will be uncovered and what we'll learn and how we can be of service to others with regards to that. And I think it's very important where I think my background is more of the spiritual side of background or the metaphysical side background. Fifth generation into spiritually gifted healers in my life, and yeah, it was just very much a normal thing for me to do growing up. And I think when I was just very curious as well, not only about spirituality and metaphysics, I was kind of like the odd child that was always reading things to do with the metaphysics and how things worked. And, anything from kind of like palmistry to Lobsang Rampa books to, you know, anything to do with spirituality. And back in those days, you weren't really openly talk about it. So it never was a thing that I'd ever think I would do for my life. So I was interested in psychology and I was going to study psychology at university, but things kind of turned around and my life flipped upside down. And I ended up in a very, very corporate world in marketing. Growing up in South Africa, I ended up actually traveling to the UK and started really my career then, but always had these metaphysical kind of like, or spiritual kind of like undertone to everything I did. And then very much just very, very quickly I ended up hitting burnout, or I suppose was bullied at work, and returning back to work after maternity and those stresses. And I think even for myself, even having that metaphysical background, I always had this very much a separation between work life, home life, spirituality, physical emotion. My work doesn't have anything to do with my emotions, and food and all the rest of the stuff. It was just a journey of kind of like, I suppose it was more of an asleep, because I did hit the snooze button in my spirituality when I was in my young teens and traveling Europe, and didn't really want to conscious because my grandmother said, once you know better, you have to do better. So I was like, I'll just put that on pause for a little bit and just be a young, careless adult for a little while, and did quite a lot of traveling. It wasn't until I had my first daughter that my spirituality started really to reawaken again. And then to reawakened again when I moved to Canada. Um, I married a Canadian, moved over to Canada a few years after my daughters were born. And the amazing thing is that having hit a little bit of burnout just before moving over, you can imagine one of the biggest stresses in life is, getting married, moving house, moving country, and we managed to kind of like do all of that more or less at the same time. But Canada has this amazing, well, especially just outside of Calgary, is this amazing vortex of the planet, which is Lake Louise, which is the Archangel Michael's portal.
Mm.
And when we move countries, things tend to always shift for us, or when we travel, things tend to shift for us. And as I moved there, I didn't realize, but this undertone of starting to reawaken my spiritual side started to open up again. I used to do a lot of automatic writing, and I see a lot when I was younger. So it wasn't uncommon for me to wake up in the middle of the night, if my aunt had been ill and she'd been sleeping over, and I'd, given her my bed and I was sleeping on the floor, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I would see like a ghost which had like a doctor's white coat on, kind of like working on my aunt, and I'd be like, oh, this is just normal. And I'd, go back to sleep. And then in the morning, I'd be like, oh, wait a minute. This happened last night. And my aunt felt so much better the next day. So, that wasn't uncommon. And that started to awaken once I hit Canada, and also, still shoving this to the side, pursued a very corporate life in oil and gas, because Alberta is very known for, it's like the Texas of Canada from that, and having a very technical background, ended up working there. But again, because I didn't deal with my burnout from before, I didn't deal with anything from before, and just kept going, I hit burnout very quickly soon after that, or what it was. And it was great because it really, really activated that getting to know my body, because my body's kind of like went, no, enough, done. And we start to investigate what is going on. And for me, I found going back into my spirituality, and being Portuguese as well. Most of my spiritual terms were all in Portuguese. So I remember typing in, hands-on healing. And Reiki popped up, and I was like, oh, it must be called Reiki. And off I went, and I did, which was offered at one of the universities in Calgary. So I did it there. I did my 3 levels of Reiki there. And that started the whole path of healing myself from within, because that was back to my basics. How do I start working within? Because it was like my nerves were kind of shot, like my gums, like I had no patience. I had no kind of like, it was, I wasn't used to being in that, so that started to awaken. I did, Reiki, and then I thought, I need something a little bit more statistical. And then I found somebody who was a massage therapist, who said to me, if you do Reiki, you should do craniosacral therapy. And I was like, what is this craniosacral therapy? And I started reading up about it, and it really ignited me. And then I did a trade or a swap with this massage therapist, and he was like, yeah, you should definitely do it, because cranial is so subtle in how it works. And because I did craniosacral therapy, you have to do about, I think it was 80 hours of anatomy, if you weren't a massage therapist or anything like that. So off at 38, I went back to school, back to university, sat not at the back of the classroom this time, right at the front, because I didn't want to be the oldest student and the dumbest. So I made sure that I listened very well. And that started that journey. And then at the same time, the formal teachings of Akashic Records stepped in. So really connecting into the soul's blueprint as to what is going on. And that started to help my healing journey in journaling, connecting into the Akashic Records, and then starting to do craniosacral therapy. And then somebody said, yeah, you should do that for people. And I was like, no. And then I was like, no, you should do it for people. And I was like, okay. So I started trying that, and now completely support people through, spiritual coaching, because a lot of coaching practices have come out of my sessions. And this journey, it was so impressive. After I met you, I had just done quite a lot of that. And David and I, we met at the Writers Workshop in Houston. And it was the Hay House Writers Workshop. And that was pretty incredible that we had some really interesting conversations. You from very much a science background, me from very much a metaphysical. And I'm very up for experimenting with things and being open to learning how things work. So we had quite a lot of really, really good conversations. And since then, it's just really being of service and helping to empower people that have experienced the same things as I did. But I started noticing that the medical industry, and I have a daughter that has quite a rare condition, really starts to support your illness. It doesn't look for your wellness or for solutions. I found it very much to be a band-aid. And I think COVID highlighted a lot of that for me. And that's where I think you had mentioned, let's do a podcast together. And I was like, I don't know what I could offer until it started to fall in, where I started having a lot of clients coming in. Okay, something's happening with the liver, and then going into the Akashic records, very similar to, Edgar Casey is one of the Akashic Records readers that even a lot of his medical, and I'm not saying that I get medical practices from the Akashic Records, but I get a lot of kind of like downloads, and I started noticing what frequencies we hold in the liver and what people were feeling emotionally, and then connecting that to what happens spiritually that could be, connecting in the dots. So yeah, and that's where I thought, no, okay, now I know I can support this in the metaphysical sense from all that I've learned. But it was great that intuitively you had seen that coming for quite a bit, because you had suggested, let's do this, and I was like, I don't know if I'm ready yet. Yeah, a little bit about your background.
It was such a beautiful conversation, and also meeting you was just random in terms of the synchronicity that we have, because we were just new in this platform, in this workshop, and we were in line for a coffee. And just in the talk, who would have thought that in one talk we would connect all of these worlds, the science and the spirituality, and also bring so much curiosity, and well, in my case, my background is also very ignited by curiosity. I've always been also a very sort of a skeptic for some things and curious for many others. And I don't conform with the narrative many times that it's just school, it's just this. I also like to read more or outside of the school things that they gave me. And I had I was blessed that I have two parents that were in science, more or less. My father is a psychologist, and my mom is a chemist, is an engineer in chemistry, so, and in environmental science. And I had a lot of books of science. I had a lot of books of psychology, and just I think that what also prime or boosted my curiosity to go beyond and to learn more was the turmoil that I had when I grew up. My parents didn't get along too well, and they had conflicts like all the couples, but many of those problems lure me to understand more about me first, and about what they were dealing with, and understanding emotions. I was always lured by emotional topics and emotions and psychology and how we think and all of those things, in addition to the raw science. So I studied biochemistry, biochemical engineering. Then I was also curious about medicine. I never went into medical school because I was not good for blood. So I was not good for opening people and seeing blood and all of those things. I would have faint, yeah, at the first subject of those things. So I didn't like that, but I loved the body, and I loved the knowledge of many of the parts of the body, of how it works. So the closest was biochemistry, and then the closest was doing a master's in biomedicine. So I pursue that. I was also living 1 year when I was doing that master's degree in Philadelphia. I did it in the University of Pennsylvania, in the Wistar Institute is the name where I did my research. And I did my research in vaccines, actually, in the vaccines that were trying to develop in those times against AIDS, against HIV. And I learned about immunity, how all these messages and this also intuitive system that we have
Mm-hmm.
really protects us. And sometimes when there are good vaccines, of course, when they are real vaccines, let's say, we have this priming response, and we
Mm-hmm.
help the body to just develop a much better recognition of any pathogen. Of course, there are many pathogens that you cannot develop those kind of things because they mutate too fast. So that's
Mm-hmm.
impossible to do something for those kind of diseases. So after doing that research in those things, I returned to Mexico because I'm from Mexico. I grew up here all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I started just applying for a job because now I wanted to work,
Mm-hmm.
not just doing science because you don't live from science, unfortunately, in Mexico.
Okay.
and, and many times they are, well, researchers and professors, we are very underpaid. So I started to look in the industry, and I fall into the industry of pharmaceuticals. And I
Mm-hmm.
started in one of the top pharmaceuticals from UK, actually, which is
Okay.
GlaxoSmithKline. And
Okay. Yes.
and I began my journey there. And it was, for me, it was an amazing job. I even lured that job because I had a girlfriend in that moment that lived
Mm-hmm.
near from the company. And it is in Mexico. It is a huge company that has a lot of land. Well, have, because now it has changed a lot. And I used to pass by through that company, and I said, one day I'm going to work there because I love the green areas, the gardens. It was a beautiful, it was like a hotel at, at the view. And I said, well, I want to work there. So I lured the job, I got the job, and I was also working for several years, 13 years actually, in clinical research, in clinical trials.
Mm-hmm.
So I work in first, I work also in vaccines trials, and for almost 5, 6 years in vaccines. Then I
Mm-hmm.
moved from to other companies, and I was in the top five major companies, I would say, because I was also in Pfizer for a very few time because didn't like the company.
Mm. Okay.
Yeah, it's just,
Interesting that.
yeah, I know. Now they have that fame. I was also in AstraZeneca. I was also in Merck Sharp and Dohme and Schering Plough and all of those major companies. And I did research in many areas, in diabetes, in cardiovascular disease, in
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune diseases, also in neuroscience. We had also protocols about bipolar disease, depression, and I think that those were the major, and also in cancer research at
Mm-hmm.
the end almost of my journey in those companies. But
Mm-hmm.
as you, I also felt that each in my body, each in my intuition, in my interoception,
Mm-hmm.
that I was getting a little tired of the same thing, because any industry, once you learn how to do the things, is just a repetitive process.
Mm-hmm.
In spite of having different diseases or having different protocols, I found it a little bit boring for me, because
Mm-hmm.
I was just I have um, the intuition that
Yeah.
I could give more and I could do more, and
Mm-hmm.
I always was also, because of my background in childhood, I was also very attuned to my body, to doing exercise, to competing. I
Mm-hmm.
swim, I swam in the past and competed in many things, amateur competitions, but I
Yeah.
did it, and I love those things. And also in open water, I swam multiple times, and I
Hmm.
love how your body is so amazing in terms of resilience, in terms of giving you that stamina when you need it, because swimming in the sea
Hmm.
is just a test for your brain more than for your body, because
Yeah.
your brain starts to wander in difficult thoughts, toxic thoughts, and also
Hmm.
you start getting some anxiety about not seeing anyone at some point, and just being
Right.
i- in the sea by yourself, and probably far away still from where you have to swim. And
Hmm.
all of those things, I think that always were permeating me and telling me that I had to do something with this knowledge, and that I had to create something to help people in the five major areas that are the ones that we are going to help people, of course.
Hmm.
And it is how we eat. I mean, I always been also conscious about what I eat, the
Hmm.
nutrition, and also the food that we have. It's extremely linked to many of our diseases, of course. And
Absolutely.
exercise, understanding the metabolism, understanding what is happening at this molecular level, because many times watching or knowing how your cells communicate, how all those messages start to be linked, and they have a very logical way of working. You suddenly understand the other phenomena in your life, because you say, well, the
Hmm.
body does this because there is a sequence of steps that it needs to take to arrive to a certain end result. No,
Hmm.
in life is the same. You follow certain steps to arrive to whatever place you want, and the body is so reflective of all of these phenomena that I was
Hmm.
really passionate about the metabolism, understanding all of those things. And the emotions, as I mentioned, I had that. Let's call it today. I think I will call it a bless that
Hmm.
I was born in that family, or in this family that
Absolutely.
yes, because they helped me to grow. They helped me to understand my emotions. They helped me to understand that probably the narratives that we listen to about being a family in the way that the society wants the family
Hmm.
probably is not functional for everyone. And we can find ways to make a family without having that standard model of having that functionality, let's say. And understanding also the consciousness. I mean, I always also like to journal and to write
Hmm.
about the things that I wanted, to write about how I felt, to write
Yeah.
about the emotions when I felt overwhelmed by emotions. I
Hmm.
always wrote, and I always like to write. And I remember that with many of my first relationships, I used to write my girlfriend's letters of love, and I
Nice.
put a lot of effort in those
Yeah.
letters, and I put a lot of emotions in those letters.
Hmm.
So that's also a passion that I have, and understanding that the spirituality is also a very interesting journey, because it began when I broke up with a person,
Hmm.
with a previous also uh, partner, and I was just a little bit overwhelmed by all the emotions, because it was a difficult relationship in terms of how it broke up,
Hmm.
and and that lured me to Buddhism. And I had a
Okay.
friend that was studying a lot of those things, and she invited me to many of the Buddhist talks and topics. So I was just caught up from that philosophy, I started to buy books and read books about Buddhism, and went to several courses and talks by Buddhist
Mm-hmm.
monks. That
Mm-hmm.
and that's my contact with the spirituality. And I think that when I was in that spiritual place, that's when I felt the most peaceful in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when many of the things began to take shape. And I started
Mm-hmm.
to notice which was going to be my future in terms of seeing, well, I'm just going to stay in this industry for a few years, and then I I need to do something with this knowledge. And that's what led me to begin this journey of the 5 pillars of health,
Mm-hmm.
and know you
Yeah.
also.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you've written a book about them, right? And
Yeah.
and which is fantastic. So yeah, pick up a copy of that, and we'll be talking about a lot of these different concepts, and because there's a lot of things that you spoke about there in the sense of it's beautiful going from a very scientific mind to be open to the metaphysical aspect of things. And even throughout you talking about, joining the family that you did from the spiritual side of things, it's stunning because I do a lot of ancestral work and look at soul's blueprints, and we choose the families that we need because they hold the story, or they hold the basis, the foundation. I talk about it as a palette of, when you're painting, they hold all the colors that you need, and the canvases, and everything that you need to create this beautiful painting called life, which is a absolutely wonderful adventure. But they have that specific criteria, and it becomes very, very interesting from that perspective, in saying, okay, we absolutely chose our families, and a lot of the times we choose them to make the changes. So you breathing in the spiritual side to balance off the science, right? Because from my perspective, metaphysics is at the closes the loop to science, so it's at the top, which brings everything back in, and they work together. So it's absolutely fascinating in tackling things from different directions and different perspectives, which is super cool. For sure. And yeah, it was like, I remember having that conversation with you, and I was just like, oh my goodness, I just managed to speak to a geneticist all about spirituality, and he understood, and I didn't feel like an outcast either, because a lot of the stuff is so in the past it all used to be about prove it.
Yeah.
Whereas now science has actually gotten to a stage with, quantum physics and quantum mechanics that is actually, starting to be able to prove these things that before it was just like, no, you've just got to trust that works. Or some people have been, and it's bringing back that miracle, but it's a miracle because we didn't quite understand how it worked before. As we're starting to become more conscious of these things, and more conscious of our relationships, and also looking at how do the emotions connect in to what's happening physically, and also looking at, I started to realize that sometimes the symptom was not really ever the root. What was the root cause? And I think that's what made me curious. What is the root cause of the discomfort that somebody's feeling, or the disease that somebody's feeling? And absolutely it could be genetic, but there was always an emotion attached to that. There was always a belief system, which was that mental aspect that connected into that disease, or that discomfort, or that organ, or that emotional trigger. And then so I went down that kind of rabbit hole, well, not a rabbit hole, but like I went down that route of looking at things from that perspective. And a wonderful thing that I did see was the future of medicine. And we're all going through quite a lot of changes at the moment in all the structures, whether it be education, whether it be health, whether it be finances. We're all going through a restructuring process. But the future of medicine, and I saw a possibility, and I've spoken about this. I do quite a lot of talks for the Theosophical Society, and I said this the other day, and we had a few nurses in, and I said, the future of medicine is looking at a patient or at a person from, okay, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. What is causing this? What is the root cause of this? Because at the moment, medicine, as I said earlier, is geared to just put you through a system. Oh, it's not bad enough yet. We're not going to look at that. And it's like, no, prevention is better than the cure. So let's look at what is the root cause of that. And I did have a glimpse of, coming into a consultant, saying, okay, this is the last protocol that usually shows surfaces is it happens in the physical body. And you're really right in saying that our body is so resilient that we push ourselves past that. In a way, it doesn't work for us because we're like, oh, I'll sleep next week. Oh, I just need to get through this month. Oh, it's just this year. I just need to hand in this project. I just need to, and I'll sleep next Tuesday. I remember thinking to myself, I'll sleep that, and until it gets to the stage where your body believes you, and then starts going, hey, slow down. And we get a cold and we ignore that. And then we go, and then it goes, hey, slow down. And we tend to ignore that. It's just like, we just got to push through just this little bit, kind of a thing, It's like midnight and I'm still working, but you just got to push through just this little bit. We're almost done until eventually the body goes, no, you're done now. You're sitting, right? And you're going to take care of me.
Yeah, exactly. And all of those things that you are mentioning, it's making a lot of sense from your spiritual narrative and your background and everything and your all the influence. You are arriving to a point where we are now proving how science works, proving things, and that epigenetics is that science that is helping to also open the eyes of many scientists that were very square and just closed-minded to this consciousness, to this collective wisdom that you are mentioning. And I think we are not going to understand everything that happens inside of us until we cease to exist, because that's the purpose of life, I think.
Absolutely.
To understand as much as possible how we work internally and how all of these phenomena start happening. But this influence that the environment has in our genes now has given us the opportunity to be responsible, to be free of those diagnostics, free of those many times free of that sentence that sometimes the medical complex gives, because it's very easy. Nowadays, I am sort of disappointed with the education of many physicians, because they just want the education system is just designed for them to learn things by memory, to memorize diseases and to memorize treatments, but they don't understand what is happening with the disease. They don't understand how the body needs to work or what is health to begin with. To cure a disease, I think that it should be the fundamental pillar to know what is being healthy, to know what is the body doing to maintain or to sustain the health. So if you don't understand what is being healthy, what is sustaining your health, of course that the first thing that comes to your mind is understanding the disease, because it's between brackets, let's say it's easier to see the symptom that is telling you already what is happening, and just give a quick remedy that helps to ease that pain, because most of these things is the pain, and fix, let's say, fix superficially many things, but they damage others. And if we don't understand where the root cause is, as you are mentioning, if we don't understand the individual as a complex, integrate relationship of several pillars, which are these emotional, which is this consciousness, which is the background that you mentioned about our parents and the wounds we are carrying about our parents, and that those wounds are also now supported by epigenetics, because that's what epigenetics says, that many of these epigenetic marks are being passed on generation through generation. And many of those epigenetic marks can be developed by emotional uh, things that happen in the families. And we know
Absolutely.
that we never learn how to be a parent, and we always
Yeah.
screw up.
We
And
always do.
we will always do it. And that's the journey now of children, to heal those wounds. And as much as possible for us nowadays as parents to understand that we can do the best we can with them, but they also need to be separate from us and heal themselves, whatever they have inside, because they are also another soul that choose us as parents, but
Absolutely.
that we don't know what do they need to heal at the beginning. No, we need to let
Yeah.
them show what they need to heal, and many times those mirrors or those
Yeah.
reflections hit us very hard, because we say, well, I have this daughter or I have this child because I need to let go of certain things. No.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I agree. Our children come to teach us, but they come to heal the conditioning that we've given them
Yeah.
from what we know. And that is the thing. You're absolutely right. I mean, I honestly believe that each parent does the best that they can with what they have and the knowledge that they have, and that's been a saving grace in the sense of knowing that we're going to mess up our children, but they knew us. They chose us, even though they knew that that was going to happen. So it's not about doing it on purpose or just letting it go, but it's the. I honestly believe that when we heal ourselves, we heal the generations before us and the generations that are here and that are to come. It's almost kind of like we start to pave that way, and then our children come in behind us and reinforce that. So we tend to make it a little bit kind of like maybe easier for them, because we start to see, oh my goodness, these are my faults. Like sometimes I'll be saying my daughters, they're 16 and 13, so that they're that at this age, and sometimes honestly, in their cheekiness, I see myself in them, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that is so me, and how do I and how do I encourage or like face that, like gear that in a way that is conducive to them? Because absolutely I need them to be cheeky, absolutely I need them to question everything, because we were taught to follow everything.
Yeah.
But it makes it a little bit difficult when they start questioning you, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, at least be open enough to know, why is it that I'm enforcing this?
Yeah.
Does it still fit? Is it worth me having that argument and losing the love of my child? Or is it worth me saying, okay, no, look, this is why we do this? Actually questioning, this is why we do this. It's so that we can be better humans, so that it is that you can be independent when you move out, so that it is that you won't suffer. I'm trying to teach you to adult. I'm trying to teach you, prepare you for the world that's out there. And sometimes we need to make those tough decisions. And you're absolutely right. Our children come to teach us, but we need to create those environments
Yeah.
for that, and you're absolutely right. We start looking at even the foods. Now there's so much knowledge out there right now, and there's so much knowledge we don't know what's right anymore.
Yeah.
We don't know. Eggs are great for you. No, they're not. This good for you. Eat oats. No, don't eat oats. It's food for animals. It gets so confusing out there as to what's in alignment with any of us. And you're right, it's quite interesting. When I did do my anatomy course, I think it was the third week that we're in, the lecturer brought up the periodic table. And I thought, God, the last time I looked and studied the periodic table, the children around me were probably not even born.
Yeah.
Right? I was just like, and these are kids that were studying to be kind of like emergency response, kind of like medics and stuff like that, that had to take an extra curriculum, an extra few credits. But I was like, oh my goodness, which was beautiful because she broke everything down to its chemical compound. But then when we looked at the diseases and we looked at this dysfunction of the body, I was like, so if there is a dysfunction or there's a lack of, a compound or something, can we not go get that in food? And her response was, no, you just take a drug. And I was like, but you've just broken down. You go to your doctor and you get medicine. And I was like, and I thought, I'm not going to push it.
Yeah.
Because there's no point. But for me, logically, I was like, you break down food, you break down the body into chemical compound. If something's missing, we add it in. And I think the big headbutt between, I think, the metaphysics and the science is that some people believe that they need to be either one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely think that one is preventative and the other one is needed when it's acute, and one supports the other. It's not either or. Yeah. I think they both need to work together. And I think that's where, again, the separation is created, right? I know that in Canada, they was trying and make it so that naturopaths or natural medicines needed, like, you weren't allowed to do it if you wanted vitamins and needed to be prescribed by a doctor. I don't know if that's still the case. At the end of last year, that was starting to come into being. But it's like, why can't both these industries just work together? And I know it's to do with money. And I know, it's pretty sad, but I think it's like you say, it's sharing the knowledge, the wisdom, or the experiences that we've had that might actually help people to consciously start thinking about their health in many, many ways. And I think that's what excited me about putting this podcast together, was coming at it from different viewpoints and understanding and learning and bringing in people that we can perhaps tackle from both perspectives or from all perspectives, and looking at, okay, what is going on and how is it presenting? And it is a passion of mine, really, to empower people with knowledge and wisdom so that they can go ahead and think for themselves. I think somewhere along the lines we've lost the ability to think for ourselves and to make those choices that are in alignment. And again, there's so much information out there, we don't know who to turn to. And sometimes even we get different messages from the same, no, this is fine. Yes, this is fine. No, that's not normal. And it's just like, is it or isn't? I just did bloods. Which one is it? What's going on? Yeah. Kind of a thing. So yeah, it's an interesting world we're navigating. I mean, one of our podcasts got totally taken off and banned on YouTube because we said the wrong things and we said stuff that wasn't in alignment with what the narrative was. So let's see how this one does.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we are going to see, how this one does. But I think that now many of the things that we said in those years, it's now being said everywhere.
Absolutely.
So we know that many of these media, this popular media, just when they try to shut you down or take down your knowledge, is because you are saying something that is true and that is right and that is based on things that you research, because we are here to talk with a background. We are not influencers. We are not just popular people that are just trying to open a new media to earn money and to fool people. We are here to transmit and to transfer all this knowledge, as you mentioned, to empower people, and that's also extremely important for me, that people have grown with a model of society telling us what is right and what is wrong, and now is turning upside down so that we by ourselves understand what is true for us, because we need to learn to understand first each of our features, let's say, our inside features, and how they work with certain things. That's why nutrition will never be for everyone the same. No, we will be very particular, and we will all have different kind of ways of tolerating certain foods, and what is right for you might not be right for me, and the other way around. So that's the beauty of understanding you, because when you
Absolutely.
understand yourself, when you understand what is good for you, that's when you start uh, making choices that are conscious, that are aware,
Absolutely.
and that resonate mostly with what you believe in. And that's when I think that your soul is speaking, no? Because it's
Hmm.
saying, this is
Yeah.
for you. This is going to be digested and metabolized in the way it has to be, because this is for you. This is the food for you. This is the pattern of exercise that you need. This is the pattern of
Hmm.
sleep that you need. And those are the things that will function for you. Sometimes, many of those things can be for a majority of people sometimes, but
Hmm.
many times there are these exceptions to the rule,
Yeah.
and those exceptions to the rule that open our eyes to many other things that we don't know.
Hmm.
And that's why
Absolutely.
having a child that has problems with health also enlightened your journey to understand that
Hmm.
these kind of things are not good, and probably not even
Hmm.
for you, but you didn't know, and you
Yeah.
start not doing those things. And what you mentioned about letting our children do their own paths now, nowadays for me it's this moment where I have to understand that my daughter was not born to follow the path of school in the same way that I
Hmm.
did, because
Yeah.
she learns in a different way. She doesn't like the traditional models of school, and I
Hmm.
am going to be able to decide her future in terms of the school
Yeah.
in just a couple of years. And I think that I'm just going to try to help her understand the basic things, and give her the tools so that she can develop this independency, and become a self learner, and try to discover what she likes and what she wants, and how she absorbs the information.
Hmm. Absolutely. And it's important. Yeah. These are the children that have come to change the future.
Yeah,
And this is why there's so many changes happening at the moment. I think the educational sector as well is, well, all, like I say, all those pillars, those foundations of government, medicine, finances, education, it's really putting a lot of stresses on those foundations because although they've worked and supported us in the past, they don't anymore.
yeah,
And they need to be changed. And it's hard, I'm not going to use limiting. It can be hard, but it can also, if we all come together and allow that change, it can happen pretty quickly. And it's focusing us to do better, to think for ourselves, to move through. And again, reading that the educational system was created to create more factory workers. So we're not
yeah,
really taught to think for ourselves. And yeah, it's quite interesting having a look at the educational system in Canada, in Scotland, and in South Africa when I grew up. It's very, very different these days, and I'm glad that it's shifted in many ways, but it still needs to go a little bit further because the way of teaching is not conducive to everybody anymore. And that's why I think we're getting so many different cases of ADHD, dyslexia, all the rest of this. It's always been there. Now there's more demand to teach differently. And
yeah,
and like you say, not only physically health wise, looking that we're all individual and not all things work for many people, it's going to happen the same in the education system. Not all students learn in the same way. And it's very interesting to see the effects on our health from those traumas that we experience as children. And yeah, I've got quite a few examples of that that we might talk about at a later stage. But the body keeps the score. The body remembers everything, right? And it's incredible where we hold our memory.
Yeah.
and the effects of it. Because we're also from, I don't know, at least from my generation, as we taught to suck it up and move on, shove it, put it under the carpet somewhere, just keep going. You've got to show up to work tomorrow, so just keep going, kind of a thing. And yeah, I've learned a lot in my journey because of that, and hoping to share that with all of the listeners, and the people that hear us.
I think that is a good segue to our next episode, which can be about the memory of the body. We will go and speak about the memory of the body, and we will go deeper into that topic. And I think that for now, as an introduction, it was a beautiful way to merge and to understand these different pathways that we are following, and creating a new neural pathway. We are the neuroplasticity of science and spirituality, and we are going to help you to create a new way of thinking, a new way of approaching things. So keep listening to us, keep asking questions. That's the most important thing in today's time. And thank you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Natasha, for sharing all your journey.
Yeah, and you as well.
Yeah. And just welcome to this new adventure.
See you all soon.
Yeah. See you soon. Bye.